My boyfriend told me he was bored of me and left me at the airport before our trip. I flew solo, took the vacation anyway, and met someone new that same night. This morning my phone blew up with 13 missed calls. We met in the most cliché yet magical way, at a bookstore. He reached for the same copy of The Great Gatsby I had just been eyeing, and we both laughed at the awkwardness of it. His name was Jake. Tall, quiet confidence, that messy dark hair that looks like it never gets brushed, but still falls perfectly, and eyes that actually held your gaze. He said something like, "You can have it, unless you believe in fate," and I rolled mine and told him I was more of a Bronte girl anyway. We ended up grabbing coffee across the street. One coffee turned into 3 hours. 3 hours turned into texting all night. That night turned into weekends, months, years. He was charming without trying too hard. The kind of guy who remembered the way I took my tea and always knew when I was faking a smile. Our first year was golden lazy Sunday mornings in bed, cooking disasters that turned into inside jokes, spontaneous road trips, and soft kisses during traffic lights. He'd play with my hair when I was stressed, send me flowers when I nailed something at work, and every now and then he'd whisper, "You're my favorite everything," and I believed him. Even when things got harder, work stress, family drama, his tendency to shut down when he was overwhelmed, we worked through it. At least, I thought we did. I gave him space when he needed it. I showed up for his dreams, supported him when he quit his job to freelance. And yeah, maybe I started carrying more of the weight, but relationships aren't 50-50 all the time, right? We planned this trip together. Greece had always been on our list, and after months of saving, researching flights, obsessing over Airbnbs, we were finally doing it. I thought this would be our fresh start. A break from the stress, a chance to reconnect. I even bought a new camera to document everything, us under the sun, on boats, laughing, dancing, being in love again. The morning of the flight, we were quiet in the Uber. I thought it was just nerves or maybe he didn't sleep well. I reached for his hand halfway to the airport and he held it, but kind of loosely. Still, I smiled. We were going to be okay. We had to be. The line for security was long, the terminal buzzing with families, solo travelers, couples holding hands. I reached into my bag to grab our passports, joking about how we were finally doing it, finally going to Greece. That's when he let go of my hand. "Wait," he said, just flat. No emotion. I turned, confused. "What?" He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. "I don't think we should do this. The trip. Any of this." I blinked. Laughed, because I thought he was joking. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "I'm bored, okay? Us. It feels like we're just going through the motions. I don't want to fake it anymore." In the middle of the airport, before we even checked in, he turned around and walked out. Just like that. I stood there holding 2 passports and a boarding pass printed with both our names. My heart didn't break. It cracked slowly, like glass under pressure, while strangers shuffled past me, unaware that my world had just shifted completely. He left me at the airport. But I didn't go home. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the space he used to occupy. It wasn't until the woman behind me gently said, "Miss, you're holding up the line," that I snapped out of it. My fingers were trembling as I stepped forward, handed over my boarding pass, and let them scan me into a new chapter one hadn't prepared for. My seat on the plane felt too big and too small at the same time. It was supposed to be a window seat for me, aisle for him. I kept glancing to the left, half expecting Jake to slide in with some last-minute joke about airport food or legroom. But the seat stayed empty. And then the doors closed. I cried for the first hour. Quietly. Pathetically. The woman next to me offered a tissue, and I think she knew better than to ask questions. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I stopped crying. Not because I was okay, but because I ran out of tears. When the plane landed in Mykonos, the sun was blinding. I took a deep breath of sea air, salty and warm, and thought, you made it. Alone, but you made it. The hotel staff greeted me with the usual vacation smiles, not knowing they were welcoming a girl who just got left behind in every sense of the word. I checked in, rolled my suitcase across the mosaic tiles, and stood in the middle of a room that was supposed to be ours. There were 2 towels shaped like swans on the bed. I took a shower that lasted too long. Put on the dress I'd packed for our first dinner in Greece. Went down to the beach bar not because I felt strong, but because the room felt haunted by memories that didn't even happen yet. I needed people. Music. Movement. The bar was glowing. Fairy lights strung through the palm trees, soft acoustic music, waves tapping the shore like applause in the background. I sat alone at a small table, ordered something with rum, and stared into it like it might offer me an answer. That's when I heard him laugh. Not Jake. Him. A guy crossed the bar with sun-kissed skin, a white button-down open, just enough to be distracting, and a laugh that sounded like it belonged under Greek skies. He caught me looking, smiled, and walked over like we were already mid-conversation. "First night here?" he asked, lightly accented. I nodded. "And you?" "I live here," he said. "But I come to the spot when I want to feel like a tourist again." His name was Luca, Italian. He spoke 5 languages, surfed at sunrise, and had that slow, deliberate way of speaking that made you feel like nothing else mattered except that moment. We talked. About everything. Nothing. He didn't ask about Jake, but he could tell I was trying not to drown. And instead of crying, he handed me another drink and told me about the best sunrise spot on the island. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days. I wasn't healed, but something cracked open inside me. Not a wound. A window. I woke up the next morning unsure if the previous night had actually happened or if it was something my lonely heart had dreamed up. But then I saw the napkin on my bedside table, 6:15 a.m., Agios Ioannis. "You'll thank me. Luca." My phone said 5:42 a.m. I stared at the ceiling for a full minute before I got up. I pulled on the hoodie I'd stolen from Jake's closet months ago, grabbed my camera, and walked out into the still blue morning. The beach was almost empty, except for Luca, who was already there, barefoot in the sand, holding 2 coffees. "You came," he said. "I didn't sleep," I replied. "That means you're living," he smiled. We sat in silence, drinking coffee as the sun cracked open the horizon. It was one of those sunrises that felt like a movie, orange melting into pink, everything glowing like it was lit from within. I took a photo. Then another. Then one of Luca, laughing at the seagulls fighting over breadcrumbs. He looked at me and said, "You have sad eyes but brave hands." I didn't know how to respond to that. So I didn't. Instead, I spent the next few days exploring the island. With him. He took me to tiny beaches no tourists knew about, showed me how to eat sea urchin fresh out of the water. I gagged, he laughed, and taught me Italian phrases I kept forgetting and making up my own versions of. We hiked. We danced in a street market to music I'd never heard before. One night, we swam under a full moon and he told me he used to believe the ocean healed things. I told him I hoped he was right. And somewhere in all that chaos, without even realizing it, I started to feel lighter. Not fixed. Not over it. But less like someone who'd been left behind, and more like someone who had left something behind. Luca never tried to fill the Jake-shaped void. He didn't ask for explanations or give me advice. He just let me exist. And in doing that, he reminded me I was still there. Still worth looking at. Still able to laugh. Still alive. On our 4th night, we sat at a rooftop bar overlooking the bay, sipping ouzo and watching boats drift like slow-moving stars. I told him everything. About Jake. The airport. The silence in that Uber ride. How much it hurt to be called boring after giving everything. Luca didn't flinch. He said, "You weren't boring. He just ran out of depth." And maybe it was the alcohol. Or the moon. Or the way the wind carried his words like a secret I was meant to hear. But I reached for his hand. He held it like he meant it. And for the first time in forever, no part of me wanted to let go. It had been 5 days since Jake walked away from me in the airport like I was an inconvenience he'd finally worked up the nerve to get rid of. 5 days since I stood in that terminal, holding 2 passports and an itinerary that was supposed to be our dream. And somehow, 5 days was all it took for something inside me to click. It happened quietly. I was getting ready for another lazy beach afternoon when I caught my reflection in the hotel mirror. Not just a glance, I actually looked at myself. Hair up, tan skin, freckles popping across my nose, no makeup, Luca's shirt knotted at the waist over my bikini. I looked happy and strong, and like someone I hadn't seen in a very long time. Something told me, take the photo. So I set up my phone on the balcony railing, framed the ocean behind me, and took a few shots. Not for revenge. Not even for validation. Just proof that I'd survived. That I was healing. That I hadn't let him break me completely. And then I did something bold. I posted one. A single photo. Me in that moment, laughing at something off camera, head tilted toward the sun. The caption was simple. Same sunrise, new perspective. Hashtag free. No callouts. Just peace. It got more likes than any photo I'd ever posted. Friends started commenting. Even people I hadn't talked to in months messaged me, "You look amazing. Where are you?" That smile. But there was one person who didn't like it. Didn't view the story. Didn't say a word. Jake. And I told myself I didn't care. I swore I didn't. Until that night at the beach bar. Luca and I were drinking out of coconuts like the world was a movie written just for us. A group of French tourists asked him to take their photo, and when he handed me his phone, I saw it. My photo. As his lock screen. I looked up, stunned. He just smiled and said, "You make the world look better." And for some reason, that hit harder than any romantic line I'd ever heard. Because I knew he wasn't just flirting, he meant it. Later, as we walked back to my hotel with bare feet and sticky hands from a shared dessert, I opened my phone again. And that's when I noticed it. My follower count had jumped. A few familiar names had popped up in my notifications. One of them? Jake's best friend. Another? His sister. I clicked on Jake's profile. He hadn't posted anything in over a week. But when I checked who had viewed my story, the new one I'd just posted of Luca and I clinking glasses in front of the sea, Jake's name was at the bottom of the list. He'd seen it. Not liked it. Not commented. But he'd seen it. That night, I put my phone face down and danced with Luca under the stars. The kind of dancing that doesn't need rhythm, just feeling. I didn't think about Jake. Not once. Not even when Luca leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said, "I hope you never let someone make you feel small again." I went to bed with salty hair and sea-tired legs, curled up in a hotel bed that no longer felt haunted. My heart felt like a room that had been aired out, windows flung open, sun streaming in. And then morning came. I was brushing my teeth when my phone started buzzing. Once, then again, then again. I wiped my hands, picked it up. 13 missed calls. All from Jake. No voicemail. Just call after call. And one text. "We need to talk. Please." I stared at the screen. Blinked. Laughed. Then I turned my phone off. Because the girl in those photos? She wasn't bored. She wasn't desperate. She was just getting started. I kept my phone off for the rest of the morning. Luca and I rented a Vespa and rode it down the coast, chasing sunlight and gelato. I held onto him with both arms, head pressed against his back, letting the wind pull every leftover thought of Jake out of my hair. The air smelled like citrus and sea, and I swear I could feel joy tiptoeing back into my bones. We stopped at a tiny cliffside cafe for lunch. Greek salad, grilled fish, endless laughter. Luca took photos of me with my camera while I posed with my fork like a model. It was silly. It was real. It felt like mine. I finally turned my phone back on at 3:17 p.m. The notifications hit like a wave. 13 missed calls. For new texts. And a DM from Jake that started with "Hey." That word. So casual. Like we were old friends reconnecting instead of him being the guy who abandoned me at an airport like forgotten luggage. Then another, "Can we talk?" I didn't handle things well. Followed by, "Saw your photos. You look different. Happy?" I guess that's what I was trying to find too. But I made a mistake. And then the kicker, "I miss you." I didn't respond. Instead, I screenshotted the messages. Not to post. Not to send. Just to remind myself later, when I might feel weak, that this moment had happened. That he wanted back what he threw away. That night, I called my best friend back home. I hadn't told her much yet, just that Jake and I broke up, and I went to Greece solo. But when she answered, all breathless and dramatic, I realized she already knew. "Your photos are everywhere," she said. I mean, not, like, viral, but enough. People are talking. Apparently, someone had reposted my sunrise photo on a travel blog. Someone else on Pinterest. My caption had been turned into a quote graphic. Same sunrise. New perspective. I laughed. I hadn't meant to start anything. I'd just meant to survive. Then she paused. "Jake reached out to me." I stiffened. "He asked if I knew where you were staying. Said he wanted to fly out there. To surprise you." The silence between us buzzed like electricity. Then I said, "If he shows up, I won't answer the door." She exhaled. "Good. You don't owe him anything." I hung up and walked out to the balcony. The sky was peach and lavender, boats glowing like tiny cities on the water. I leaned over the railing and watched the tide move in and out like a secret. Luca came out and wrapped his arms around my waist. "He called, didn't he?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "You okay?" I turned and looked at him. This man who had held space for me without trying to fill it. Who let me cry and didn't flinch. Who didn't ask me to explain why I was still untangling threads from a love that nearly unraveled me. "I think I'm more than okay," I said. He kissed my forehead, and we watched the sun melt into the Aegean like it was clapping for us. Jake had missed his chance. I wasn't going backward. I was becoming someone new. The next morning, I woke up to another message from Jake. "I'm flying to Mykonos. I land Friday." No question. No, "Do you want to see me?" Just a statement, like he had the right to decide when and how our story reopened. My stomach turned, not from nerves, but from disbelief. This was the same man who'd walked away from me mid-sentence in an airport. Who made me feel small enough to question if love had an expiration date I didn't know about? And now he was just showing up? I didn't reply. Not even to say, don't come. Because if there was one thing I learned this week, it's that silence sometimes speaks louder than anything else. Luca and I spent that day sailing. We joined a small group tour that circled the coast, anchoring at hidden coves with water so clear you could see your own healing in the reflection. I swam with strangers and laughed with sunburnt cheeks. Luca held my hand on the deck, his thumb tracing circles into my skin while the sun painted us gold. It wasn't a date, but it felt like something better, real, effortless companionship. At one point, we were sitting on the bow of the boat, our legs swinging over the edge, when he looked at me and said, "You know what I like about you?" I raised a brow, expecting something flirty or funny. You don't pretend to be okay when you're not. And you don't apologize for being in process. It was such a simple thing to say. But it landed like a truth I hadn't let myself believe, that maybe I wasn't broken for feeling deeply. Maybe I was just human. That night, back at the hotel, I logged into Instagram to post a video. It was a short clip, a pan of the sunset from the boat, laughter in the background, Luca's voice faintly heard saying, "You'll miss it," followed by my own off-screen giggle. I captioned it, "Healing looks like this." The DMs came quickly. More than I'd expected. Women, mostly. Strangers telling me they'd just gone through a breakup, and my posts gave them hope. Friends asking what sunscreen I was using, bless them. And then, Jake's name, again. Another message. "Are you with someone?" I didn't open it. Instead, I closed the app, slipped on a dress that made me feel expensive, and walked down to meet Luca at the bar by the pool. We drank sangria and made up stories about the people sitting nearby. I laughed so hard I cried. And when he kissed me that night, slow and careful, I didn't think of Jake once. Friday came. The day Jake said he'd arrive. I had a massage scheduled that morning, followed by a photography tour I signed up for last minute. I wandered alleys with blue shutters and pink flowers, capturing corners that felt like stories, all while my phone buzzed in my bag. I didn't check it. Around 6 p.m., I was walking back toward the hotel when I saw him. Jake. Standing by the entrance. He looked like he hadn't slept. Rumpled shirt. Eyes searching. That familiar slouch in his posture when he was unsure of himself. For a second, I froze. Then I kept walking. Past him. He turned, confused. "Sabrina, wait." I stopped. Slowly, he stepped closer. I needed to see you. I was wrong. About everything. About us. I looked at him like he was a memory I'd outgrown. "You said I was boring," I replied. "At an airport. Before our dream trip. You didn't just leave me, Jake. You erased me." "I was scared," he said. "I thought if I didn't feel excited all the time, something was wrong. But seeing you now, you're glowing." And I realized I didn't know what I had. I nodded slowly. "You didn't. But that's okay. Because I do." His brows pulled together. "Do what?" "Know what I have. And what I deserve." I walked past him and didn't look back. Because he wasn't the story anymore. I was. The strange thing about closure is that it rarely comes in the way you think it will. It doesn't come with dramatic music or cinematic tears. Sometimes it's just walking away. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you finally feel enough for yourself. That night, after I passed Jake outside the hotel, I didn't cry. I didn't feel shaken or wrecked. I felt clear. Like someone had finally wiped the fog off the glass I'd been trying to see through for far too long. Luca and I had dinner on the beach that evening. A table was set just for us, candles flickering in the breeze, waves whispering secrets to the sand. He didn't ask about Jake. He didn't need to. He just poured me wine and handed me the better half of the bread basket. "You seem lighter," he said. "I am." He smiled, and we clinked glasses. After dinner, we walked along the shoreline, barefoot and quiet. I told him everything, how Jake had looked, what he said, how surreal it felt to be standing in front of someone who once made my world spin, and feeling absolutely still inside. "I thought I would fall apart," I confessed. "But I didn't." "That's because you already did," Luca said gently. "And you built something stronger from the pieces." We watched the moon rise over the water, silver and soft. I leaned against him and thought, this is what peace feels like. It doesn't knock. It just quietly arrives and sits next to you. The next morning, I woke up early. My flight back home was in a few hours, and I didn't want to leave in a rush. I stood on the balcony in a robe, watching the first blush of sunrise touch the edges of the island. I felt grateful. Not for the pain, but for the strength that followed. For the way heartbreak stripped everything away and left behind someone I finally recognized. I left a note for Luca on the bedside table. Thank you for reminding me who I am. Maybe I'll see you in Rome one day. S. At the airport, I moved through security alone. But this time, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. I boarded my flight, found my seat by the window, and smiled as I watched the island shrink into blue and white below. I opened my phone and checked my inbox. Jake had sent one more message. I get it now. I lost something I didn't deserve. I hope you're happy. And I didn't feel the need to respond. Instead, I opened my camera roll and scrolled through the photos. Me on the Vespa. Me in the water. Me laughing with wind in my hair. None of them had Jake in them. They were all mine. 2 weeks later, I posted the last photo from the trip. A close-up Luca had taken of me on our last night, wind-blown hair, sun-kissed skin, eyes half-closed mid-laugh. The caption was simple. She didn't get her old life back. She built a better one. That post? It hit 10K likes in 2 hours. The comments were flooded with love, but the most important part wasn't public. It was personal. I felt it in my bones. I wasn't the girl who got left at the airport anymore. I was the girl who bought the ticket anyway. The girl who loved, lost, learned, and left. And when people talk about me now, I hope they don't say, she was the one Jake left. I hope they say, she was the one who made leaving the best thing that ever happened to her. Because they'd be right. That was the last time I ever checked his messages. And the first time I truly felt like I'd arrived.